Hey, what's up everybody? I'd like to welcome you to another JUCE tutorial. And in this tutorial, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how to set up sliders using the slider class and also how to label them properly using the label class. So we're working on our sampler at the moment. As you can see, this is what the finished product looks like. At the moment, the dials aren't actually attached to anything. So this is just a beginner's tutorial for people that are looking to learn how to actually draw these dials and these labels. So a very quick reminder that if you like these tutorials and you want to see more of them, consider giving to the Patreon on patreon.com/theaudioprogrammer. And we also have some merchandise below. Below this video, you'll see some merchandise. We have some shirts, cups, stickers, and so on. Go ahead and check those out as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm going to do is reset all of this code using get reset, and here we go. So I'm just going to minimize this. So once again, this is something that's a little bit more for the beginners. I have a tutorial that I did like this a few years ago, but I've learned quite a bit since then, and this will be a good tutorial for everybody. So one second, my Ableton's kind of crashed. So here we go. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull that API back up in a second. At the moment, I'm in the plugin for our sampler, and I'm in the plugin editor. So if you remember, the plugin editor is the side where we want to actually draw all of our UI controls. So anything that the user sees is happening in the plugin editor, and anything that's happening using hard DSP, so any sort of math that's defining how our audio is being processed in the audio callback, so on and so forth, is being done in the plugin processor. So let me pull that API back up. And if we scroll down, and I love just showing people where all of this is at, because so many people must be wondering, where do you actually find all of this from? So if we just go over here to the slider class and just click in there, we will see that we have the slider class. So all we have to do to create a slider object is just use the slider, and then we just name our slider. So we could just start by saying slider. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create 4 sliders here. First one is going to be the attack slider. So I'll just call this attack slider, and then decay slider, sustain slider, and the release slider. And you can declare them all on the same line like that, or if you want, you can declare them separately as well by just doing something like that, okay, and doing that for all 4. So you could do that either way. So we'll go into the slider class here, and as you can see that there are many types of sliders that we can make. We can make this linear type slider. You could also do these rotary sliders as well. So those are really kind of the 2 most common types of sliders that we have there. So let's go ahead and try that. What we could do is we can go to our editor here, and we're going to start in our constructor. So we know it's the constructor because we have it's the same name as the class that we're in. Okay, and the constructor just calls once when our plugin first initializes. So that's where we want to set up all of our dials and sliders. We just need to set those up once when the plugin actually first initializes. We don't need to do it repeatedly every single time. So scrolling down a little bit further, you can see that there's loads of different stuff that we can do here. We have different color IDs that we could do to, if we want to change certain aspects of the slider as well, and we will do those a little bit later in the tutorial. And let's just start by setting the slider style. So as you can see, slider style is an enum within the slider class. So what we need to do is we need to call set slider style just by calling our slider and calling the method set slider style. So we can start with our attack slider, and attack slider set slider style. And then here in slider style, the way that we need to call that is we can see slider style is an enum in the slider class. So we have to call slider and then colon slider style and then colon again. And then we need to tell it what type of slider that we want it to be. So we'll make these rotary sliders. So once again, we're in the slider class. Then we want to go into slider style. And then we can go into rotary. And I like rotary vertical drag. That seems pretty intuitive for plugins. Most of the plugins I work with tend to use this rotary vertical drag. And so that's how we set our slider style. When we first started the tutorial, you might have seen that we had a box below the slider that actually tells what the value is. So that is that can be set using the text box. So we have text box. So we have another enum here that's text box and text entry box position. We could do no text box if we wanted. Or we could do any of these. I like to use text box below. So we could do that by doing this slider. Oh, actually, this is interesting. I didn't actually know this. You could do, you can actually set these in the constructor. That's interesting. So we're going to do it the way that I'm used to normally doing it, which is set text box style. And we're going to do it like that. So we could do attack slider, set text box style. And then we would do slider, once again, because we're in the slider class. And then we could do text box below. Now, read only is if you want to be able to set it where the user can actually just double click inside the text box and actually reset it to a different value manually. I like to set this to false, or I'm sorry, to true. So you can only actually change the value using the dial itself. And then here you'll set your width and height for the actual box. So let's go with just 40 and 20 for some arbitrary values. And then we also have a function called set range. So in here you can tell it a minimum and a maximum and and then you have this interval, which is optional. We know it's optional because you have this equals 0 at the end. And the interval is how much you want to increment or decrement your slider by. So what we could do is we could say attack slider set range. And then our minimum will be 0.0. I put this F just to make sure that this number is always going to be a float. And then I'll put the maximum. Let's make our attack slider 5. And then I'm going to do a third argument, which is going to be 0.01. And that's how much I'm going to have my slider incrementing or decrementing by. If you leave this blank, what you'll find is in the text box it'll have like some sort of 5-digit long decimal number. So it'll be like 0.054367 or something like that. And it can look kind of messy. So I like to keep it clean. So 2 digits is enough for me, or 3 digits. So I'm going to do like that. And then what we need to do in order to make the slider actually visible on the editor. So the editor is actually the full plugin itself. So that's like kind of your main window. What we could do is we could use this function called add and make visible. And that makes the slider, which is a type of component. So we put add and make visible attack slider. And that lets us know that the attack slider is a child component of the editor. So the editor is the main window, and then it's saying, hey, we're going to put another component on top of this main window that's going to be a child component called attack slider. Now what I can do is once I've set add and make visible, I can actually just add it down here and resized. Okay, so I could say M attack slider, and there are probably 5 or 6 different ways that you can actually set the position of the slider on this window. The one that I like to use is set bounds relative. This is really nice because it lets you set kind of the width. So basically, if you have your plugin window and it is 400 pixels, what it'll do is rather than having to set the position manually and say like 200, 300, to set the X and the Y, what you can do is these are automatically set between 0 and 1. So if I wanted the if I wanted this to be halfway across on the X axis, I can just say 0.5, okay, because 0.5 is half of 1. Okay, and let's just for this particular time, let's just set it in the middle of the screen. So we'll do 0.5 for the y-axis as well. Then the width, I'll just make these 0.1. So 0.1 means 1/10 of what the parent component is. Okay, and then the height I will make 0.4. And what we should see when we actually build this, so we're just going to build this now. And here we go. Here we are in Hello Slider. And what we see is a slider that's sort of in the middle of the screen. Okay, I say sort of in the middle, so because it actually gives a little bit of margin around, and when you set the X and Y, the X and Y are actually from the top left of this component. Okay, so it's not from like right here, it's not from the center of the slider, it's actually from the top left. So it would be like right here, basically. So that's how you draw a slider to the screen. Okay, so now let's just do that for all of our sliders. So we have decay, sustain slider, and release slider that we're going to do. So I'm just going to change this to decay. And as you can see, setting up a UI can take a little bit of time. Okay, so it takes a little bit of time to get it right. Sometimes I have to actually do these before my tutorials because they just take so long to actually position. But hopefully for something this simple, we won't need to take too much time. Okay, so sustain. I'm going to change the range of the sustain slider to the maximum to 1.0. And then I'm going to do the same thing for release. Okay. Now we're going to go down and we're actually just going to place these on the screen. So if we say, so let's just think about this constructively for a moment, right? So what I can do is I could do MDK slider, set bounds relative. And now we're presented with these coordinates that we need to do again. So set bounds relative. I'm just doing this just to show you how I'm going to extend this out. So release slider, set bounds relative. Okay, so here we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try. So one thing that's good in coding for coding practices is to try to make it where you're not using what's called magic numbers, or that you basically have it set up where you only need to change place. You only need to change a number in one place, and it can change all of your sliders around. Okay, so let's do that for a couple of these, right? So if I do a const auto, I say const because we don't need to actually change. We don't actually need to change the width or the height of the sliders at any point in time. So we can just set those to be const, which means that the number is not going to change. So we could say start y is equal to 0.5, right? And then what I could do, because all of our sliders are going, I'm going to just draw them straight across from left to right. So if I'm doing that, I don't need to put 0.5 everywhere in all of these. I could just put it in one place, and now I can just say this is going to be start y, this is going to be start y, and this is going to be start y. Okay, now I can do the same thing here for the width of the slider. I don't need all these sliders to be different widths and heights. They can all just be the same thing. So I could say const auto slider width, or actually it's more like a dial, isn't it? So I'll say dial width equals 0.1. Okay, and the F just means float. And then I'll do the same thing here, dial width. Okay. Same thing for dial height. So just set another const, and that will be 0.4. We might have to do some slight adjustments to this. Okay, I'm just using arbitrary values, and then I'll just take this, copy it, and paste it there. Okay, now our attack slider, or our different sliders are going to be, they're not all going to be 0.5, are they? They're going to be drawn from left to right, which means that the starting X position is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to move this a little bit further towards the right. I'm going to put start Y at 0.6 as well. Okay, and so let's do a const auto start X equals 0.6. So now we could use this as start X. Drawing these sliders, especially when you have a text box, can be a little bit tricky, okay, to get these right. But so let's say that this is going to be start X, right? And then we're just going to go over to the right by dial width, by adding dial width to this start position X. Okay, so we'll set it 0.1 to the right of our first slider. So we will say dial width here. Now what we want here is we will once again set this relative to our first slider. Okay, but what we could do is we could say, okay, we want it dial width times 2, right? Because what I want is we have start X, which is where our attack slider starts. Then we have start X plus dial width, and now I need it to be 0.1 away from where the decay slider is. So that's why I'm doing dial width times 2, which gives us 0.2, right? And make sure you use your order of operations here. So we have, I don't even need the parentheses here because it would do the multiplication before the addition, but I put it there just for understanding. And so what do you think this one's going to be? So we have start X plus dial width, and then times 3, right? So that is how we're going to set those relative to each other. Now, if I wanted to change the starting X, and then if I change the starting X, I don't need to change all of these anymore because they'll just move with wherever start X is, right? Okay. Same thing with dial width or start Y. They'll all just move relative, and I just need to change this one number just to change everything. Okay. So that's why I'm doing it this way. It's nice to have code that's nice and extendable. Okay. So here we go. So let's see where we're at now. Got hello sampler. And we can see that we're nice and in a nice position here, down here in the bottom right. Okay, and these turn. So that's nice. So this is cool. One of the things that we can see is that we don't actually have any labels. So there's no way for the user to actually know if this is attack, decay, or whatever. So we need to do that now. And we can do that using the label class. Okay. So let me just demonstrate this for you really quick. So let's say that I wanted to change one thing. So if I just change it one place, right? Now it changes everything, and it just changes where my starting position is, right? So I'm just showing you how easy it is to change one number, and now it changes, and now everything is still relative to where the starting position is. So that's the reason why we like to do things like this. And by the way, if you have improvements that you like to propose to this tutorial, I'm happy to hear them. They're very helpful for other people that are watching as well. So please feel free to give coding feedback and ways that you could improve. We're always looking to improve here in these tutorials. So now we have our slider set up, so that looks pretty good. Now we can set up this the labels using the label class. So the label class, you could do a lot of things. Once again, you can actually set up a listener that changes for if something happens. You can change what the label says and so on and so forth. We're just going to do a very basic example here. Once again, you have your color IDs where you can set the background color ID. You can change the text, right? So maybe we'll do a little bit of that as well. So we have the label, and we can set the text of it, okay? And then we have this notification type. So we're going to set notification type to not send a notification, because we don't need to let anybody know that there's any sort of change in the label. So first thing we'll do is we'll set up for labels. So we got label, and then we got attack label, decay label, sustain label, release label. Okay, and here we go. So the way I like to do these is I like to have them close to where the sliders are. So we got attack label. We can start by setting some text, right? So you see that there's a function called set font. So this is nice. We can set how big we want the font to be or what type of font we want to use. So we'll use just a font height of 10, and then we'll do set text. So this needs a string, so we need to put quotes around it, and this will be attack. And we can do notification type, : don't send notification. Don't need to send any notifications on this. Okay. Now we have also justification. So where we're actually putting the label. I'm not sure where it's at. Set justification type. Okay. If you have any sort of questions, you're not sure, like, where do I actually find this information? Normally you can just click in here and you have this justification, and then you have all of these different options here. Okay. So that's if you get kind of lost on what you need to do. So we could do attack label, set justification type, and then we say justification, and then we'll do top centered. centered top. So if you, just to let you know, if you try to do it below and you have a text box below, it'll automatically put it back to the top. Okay, so the text box position and the label position, I don't believe that those could be the same. Those have to be different. Okay, and another thing that we could do, so we need to let it know, okay, we have this label. What are we associating it with? We want to associate it with the attack slider. So we could say M attack label attached to component. Okay. And here is where we actually say, hey, we want this label to be on the center top of the attack slider. Now this component takes a pointer argument. Okay. So, which means that we have to give it the memory address. Okay, we get a little bit deep with the C++ here, but we need to give it the memory address of the attack slider. We can do that by using the ampersand operator and saying M attack slider. Okay, and then we have a boolean here on the left. We don't want it to be on the left. We want it to be on the center top. So we're going to set that to false. Okay, so now, so what we could do is we could label our code here. We could say attack slider, and then here we have decay slider. And then what I could do is I could just copy all this. Pretty much all of this is going to be the same here, except I'm just going to change it to decay. Okay, and I can just copy this, paste it here, here, and then we need to make sure that we change it to the decay slider. We need to make sure that we change this to decay. So there we go. And then sustain slider. And as you can see, this makes it very nice and readable, doesn't it? So you can see all of the stuff that's associated with the attack slider is right there, just in one place, right? So that's nice to have. So here we go. We need to copy this stuff again because it's pretty much all the same. So we got sustain, and I'm going to copy this because we're just going to paste this in all of these places. Okay, and then we have release slider. Okay, and we're going to copy all the label information again. Okay. And if you have different ways of doing this, they're all different. There's no one definite way to do all this. So feel free to get creative. And, you know, there's loads of stuff that you can do. If you want all of these sliders to be pointers, unique pointers, rather than just putting them on the stack as I did, you can do that as well if you're looking to optimize. So I think that's everything we need to do. Oh, actually, let's do this really quick as well, right? So let's say another thing I wanted to show you is that you can also change the color. So you can do some basic customization here without actually having to go into what's called the look and feel class. So we could do M attack slider, and then we do set color. And then in here you have these color IDs. So I'm not sure if you remember, but if I go back to the slider, and then in here you have these color IDs. So we could change the background, we could change the thumb color ID. So we'll just change the thumb color ID for now, right? So we could do, so once again, we're in the slider class. They got color IDs, then thumb color ID. And then here you can set the color just using the colors, and then we'll just say red here. Then once again, we'll do all of this for these other ones, right? So we can do decay. So this is a nice way just to get a little bit of customization in there without I don't want that there. I want it down here without having to do a whole lot of coding. Okay, and then we have release. Let's do something for the label, right? So let's say we want to make the label, let's just say red, right? So we'll set the text to the text to not red. Let's do set color, and we will do, so we're in the label class, and now we need the label color IDs. Label color IDs, and then we will do text color ID. And let's set it maybe to green. So let's do colors, green. All right, and you can do all kinds of, you can do all types of different stuff. So you can have the color change if there's if there's a wave file that's actually loaded. There's loads of stuff that you can do. Okay, so we got decay, then sustain, and release. So now let's go ahead and compile that. And let's see where we're at. Okay, so here we are. We drag this in. There we go. So this can be like your Christmas sampler where you have the, as you can see, the text for all of these says decay, decay, and decay because we haven't actually changed the text for those, so we could do that very quickly. But you can see we have the green text, we have the red thumbnail now, and so we will go back and change that very quickly. So this one needs to be changed to sustain. This one needs to be changed to release, and there we go. And just setting this up again. And there you go. So now we have our ADSR controls, and this is something that we're going to start linking up with some stuff for actually being able to control the actual samples. So I could drag a sample in here. And at the moment, so a little bit later, we'll probably actually take this, move this out to its own class, take the window, actually move it up. But you can see that this works. But these aren't attached to anything right now. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. That's just on how to draw the sliders and the labels themselves. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.